The reason I decided to direct All Our Children goes back to working with the playwright about 10 years ago on a production of um, Arthur Miller's View from the Bridge. During that time, Stephen spoke about his son Joey, who is profoundly disabled, and about a play that he'd written after asking himself a rather shocking question of what would Joey's life have been like had he been born in Germany in the 1940s, under a regime that considered people like Joey, disabled people, um, lives unworthy of life. It's set in 1941 in a children's clinic in a small German town. At its centre is Victor. He's the doctor who runs the clinic and who finds himself drawn into the Nazi Action T4 euthanasia program, the systematic killing, the murder of hundreds of thousands of disabled people. Um, Around 5,000 of them were thought to have been children. And it was all justified as a way of saving resources for the war effort. Around the doctor are the mothers of these children and the staff who care for them, and then the officials that arrive with quotas and forms, asking for signatures that had literally had life and death consequences. Um, at the heart of the play is a long scene in the second half, in the second act, between Victor and a real historical figure, Clemens August von Galen, the Bishop of Munster. Um, and von Galen was one of the very few church leaders who condemned publicly the killing of disabled people from the pulpit. And he was a popular and influential figure, and he presented a real problem for Hitler and his regime. Von Galen's sermons were printed and distributed throughout Germany. The RAF even airdropped them over occupied Europe. All of this took place at a time when people were being persecuted and imprisoned and murdered, even for simply speaking out against Hitler. Yet, von Galen had the courage to speak out against him and continued denouncing what was happening, and he was instrumental in forcing a halt to the T4 program. So, for me, All Our Children is not only a play about a dark chapter in history, which of course it is, but it's a play about courage and conscience and responsibility. And it forces us to look at how ordinary people, the doctors, the mothers, the clerks, the priests even, make choices under pressure, and how easy it is to hide behind rules and regulations and propaganda and slogans when vulnerable lives are at stake. But it also speaks to what's been called the quotidian creep of totalitarianism. And I really like that phrase. It's the tiny everyday changes that people don't notice until it's too late. The proverbial frog in the pan of boiling water. And it's hugely relevant in today's world, where most people are completely unaware or uninformed about what's actually going on in the world, particularly in the digital world, but also with the looming energy crisis that we all face. They're blissfully unaware. Um, but it's also a world that often feels very black and white. You're for something or you're against something. You're left wing or you're right wing. You're pro this, anti that. But there's very little space for that kind of grey area that most of us actually inhabit if we would just take a moment to think about it. So one of the things I love about the play is that it's rooted in real people in the real world, and it insists on that grey, on moral complexity, on the moral complexity of our lives, while still being absolutely clear that some things are just wrong. And when people today find courage to stand up against these things, whether it's on scientific or moral or human grounds, they echo figures like von Galen, who spoke out when his life was genuinely at risk. So, All Our Children is a wonderful, powerful, um, and humane piece of theatre, and it's been a joy to work on. We've got a wonderful cast who've all had very emotional experience uncovering the complexities of the play, and I think it'll leave audiences thinking for days afterwards because it asks questions that are not only difficult to ask but are very rarely asked. And and I hope you come and see it, and I hope you find it as moving and as thought provoking as we have in presenting it.